doors were open, ground was broken, and I just kept walking. I'm coming through it from more from the streets than from an institutional setup. And so I didn't really know what I was doing until I knew what I was doing. But if I had known earlier, I would have thought I couldn't do it and I wouldn't have done it.
Welcome to the ZAMI NOBLA National Organization of Black Lesbians on Aging podcast. We are your sound source for Black lesbian herstory. I'm your host, Angela Denise Davis. There's nothing like a book party, and a party we had. On May 27, 2023, when Charis Books and ZAMI NOBLA hosted the book tour of Sharon Bridgforth with her book, Bull Jean and Day Dem Back. As I listened to this recording, I discovered all over again why I absolutely love Sharon Bridgforth and the work she brings in the world. And I'm sure you'll say the same after listening to this. In the beginning, there is an introduction by E.R. Anderson, who is the executive director of Charis Circle with Charis Books.
Good evening. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. And Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're so honored to be here with our friends and longtime collaborators, ZAMI NOBLA, to welcome esteemed writer Sharon Bridgforth in conversation with ZAMI NOBLA creative director Angela Denise Davis. This is our second celebration. Well, really, it's like our 500th, millionth celebration of Bull Jean. But our second recent celebration of Bull Jean and Dem Day Back. We got to do a purely virtual one, and we really wanted to get to host you in person for the full experience. So we're so glad to get to do that, and so glad to also be able to offer this virtual component for folks who are watching. So we're glad to have a lot of folks in the chat already hype and excited, and I want to let folks know who are watching, they can ask questions and we will vocalize those questions. And for everybody who's physically in the room with us, I'll bring a microphone to you so that you may also ask questions. For folks who don't know, ZAMI NOBLA is deeply rooted in Atlanta, Georgia, with a national reach. ZAMI NOBLA stands for the National Organization of Black Lesbians on Aging. It is a membership-based organization committed to building a base of power for Black lesbians over the age of 40, living anywhere in the country. They center service, advocacy, and community action research. And Angela Denise Davis is the creative director for ZAMI NOBLA. In 2018, she founded the ZAMI NOBLA podcast, a sound source for Black lesbian history, and currently serves as host, editor, and producer. In 2019, she started ZAMI NOBLA's community ukulele program, UkeIn. Her role as a creative director also includes producing graphic design work for the organization and digital content creation. She is a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, where she earned a BA in art. She also holds a Master of Divinity from Vanderbilt University Divinity School and a Master of Science and Rehabilitation Counseling from Georgia State University. We are always very honored to have Angela Denise Davis with us. But the person of the hour tonight is Sharon Bridgforth. Sharon Bridgforth is the 2022 winner of Yale's Wyndham Campbell Prize in Drama, a 2020 to 2023 Playwrights Center core member, a 2022 to 2023 McKnight National Fellow, and a New Dramatists alumni. She has received support from the Doris Duke Performing Artist Award, Creative Capital, MAP Fund, and the National Performance Network. Her work is featured in Teaching Black, The Craft of Teaching on Black Life and Literature, Mouths of Rain, an anthology of Black lesbian thought, which also you can go back in our archive and watch the beautiful event we got to do on that. Feminist Studies Volume 48, and number 1, which honored 40 years of This Bridge Called My Back, and But Some of Us Are Brave. Sharon has had the privilege of benefiting from support from the ZAMI NOBLA and Charis Books community since 1998, when she toured with the RedBone Press edition of the Bull Jean stories. In her new book, Bull Jean and Dim Day Back from 53rd State Press, Bull Jean returns in 2 performance novels. Both will be produced as main stage productions at Pillsbury House Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2023. So we are so proud to have you back. And please give it up one more time for Sharon and Angela Denise Davis.
It is such an honor to be here with you, Sharon Bridgforth. This is ZAMI NOBLA's second time to be in conversation with you. And but it's also my second time to be in conversation with you as you were a guest on the ZAMI NOBLA podcast. And I just have to say, Bull Jean has been busy. She has been busy, and there's just been such a flurry of activity that has happened since the last time you spoke with Marianne regarding the upcoming publication at that time of the Bull Jean Day Dim Back publication. And so catch us up, because I know that a lot of stuff has been happening in Minneapolis, and it seems like Bull Jean has just been creatively bringing things into the atmosphere that so many of us have enjoyed and will enjoy, because things are going on in the future that we're really excited about. So catch us up in terms of what's been happening with Bull Jean on the stage in Minneapolis and the time between your last conversation with Marianne.
Thank you. I first have to say thank you, Angela. I am so honored to be in conversation with you. I still treasure the conversation that we had on your podcast. And so that you're taking time and energy means a lot to me. And ZAMI NOBLA, Charis Books and more, Atlanta, and all of y'all here, thank you. I am so, like, when I listen to my bio, I usually want to cry, because so much happens, so much support, so much love. And you all are a distinct part of that in my journey, for me to be able to sit here and even listen to those things. So anyway, I always have to first say Marianne helped Bull Jean come back, because Bull Jean first was published in 1998 by RedBone Press, Lisa C. Moore, mother of the house of RedBone Press. And Lisa and I toured everywhere, and we were here, and we were supported and embraced here. And then I feel like during that time, Bull Jean helped me release a pattern that I had around unrequited love, and around this really deep wound inside of me of believing that I wasn't going to receive love. But what happened was, to prove that true, I never was with people who were available to love. And then what I found out was I didn't want to be available. So writing a Bull Jean really helped heal that in me. And then after that, I met my wife, Dr. Omi Oshun, Joni L. Jones, Dr. Jones. We've been together since 2002. And Omi is actually a performer in the premiere of Bull Jean We Wake, along with another dear friend performer, Amy Bryant. But we were visiting in town, and you all were in San Francisco. We had lunch, and Marianne said, "Where is Bull Jean?" And this was like around 2014, maybe 2017. Okay. And I had been really, for years, I really wanted to be with Bull Jean in writing, and I just couldn't, like, nothing happened. Marianne said, "Where is Bull Jean?" And I said, "I don't know." She said, "You know, she old, right?" and it's like everything opened up. I was like, "She sure is. She old. She old." And then simultaneously, I was, growing in my own age and all of that. And also in my relationship with my mother, which is where this wound around love had to heal, of believing that I wasn't going to be loved. And Bull Jean just started talking. And I honestly didn't realize that I had been writing, but from that point on, I started writing a lot. And then I just started I decided one day to go back in and look at what I had written. And then I was able to, it took quite a number of years, but I was able to create this draft of the piece that became Bulgine We Wake. And so Pillsbury House Theater in Minneapolis is one of my artistic homes. I've been going to Minneapolis regularly since around 1993. And Pillsbury House Theater has just always been a place that has supported me. And just as I was finishing a draft of Bulgine We Wake, they basically invited me to essentially be in residence. And so they did 3 different pieces with Bulgine. One was called the Bulgine Experience, where they took an excerpt and Signe Heraday directed it, and Omi was in that piece. And we also worked with a video artist, and we took from the Bulgine Stories, which was the 1998 piece, and played with it to kind of just learn, okay, when we do this now, what is this? Mm-hmm. And then that was in around November 2022. And then January 2023, Amy K. Bryant did the whole Bulgine Stories, which Signe directed. And then the premiere of Bulgine We Wake, which both Omi and Amy will be in, will be directed by Daniel Alexander Jones. And it opens June 22nd and it closes July 2nd. Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited and so grateful.
It's very interesting because hearing the backstory of how Bulgine really invited you into a space of healing around love, and your wife, Dr. Omi, being a part of this new presentation is kind of interesting. How was it having her in the midst of that production, knowing the backstory of how Bulgine invited you into that healing space?
Well, we first started working together in 1990. So Omi moved to Austin from DC. Yeah, from DC. She was at Howard and she moved to Austin to teach at the University of Texas at Austin in 1990. And I had moved from LA to Austin in 89. And I started a theater company called the Root Women Theater Company, which NPN, which we got some old NPN heads in the house, supported, and we toured. And so we have been working together for a really long time. So Omi's been a performer, a dramaturg, a producer of my work, a scholar writing about my work and all of that. So it was very full circle. And in the full circleness of it, also to be working with her and Daniel and Signe and Amy, who I have, also have this really long relationship with all of them. Because of that, it was the healing inside of it for me was accelerated. So all there is love and trust. All there is surrender for me. All there is curiosity and wonder. Mm-hmm. And then I get to receive their gifts and their knowings and all of that. So it was a lot of fun. It was probably stressful for her because that was a lot of words that Dr. Jones had to deal with up on that stage, and then stage directions, and you got, video, and you got props and all that. So probably stressful for her, but for me, it was, it was not.
Well, and it's also interesting because as you speak about Daniel Alexander Jones, who you've had this relationship with I think on the podcast, we talked about co-mentoring.
Yes.
At one time. You mentored him. And now in this role where you see him come into this space of, well, not come into because he's been doing it, but in this really space of giving you the space to do your work. I mean, how was that as an experience of having someone you mentored, on the flip side of that, now welcome you into that space?
Yeah, I think maybe Daniel mentored me. He's younger than me, but I have always felt he is more experienced than I am and has more literal training. And he just has the kind of mind that is so brilliant. Like he knows, and he's a visual artist. He's did some tour with Urban Bush Women at one point. He said they danced the skin off his pinky toe. He's an incredible writer, a director. So he's So I think, and we started working together. Well, we actually honestly haven't worked together very often at all, but we talk every day. We met in 1994 because Daniel was brought to Austin to direct Shea Youngblood's show. Was it Shaking the Mess Out of Misery? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So so many connections. Oh, Talking Bones. Maybe it was Talking Bones. Anyway, one of them. Yeah. And so that's why we met, was because he came to town to direct Shea's show. And I was such a crazy fan of Shea's work that I just basically rolled up and I was like, y'all got to let me in here. And they did. And then that's how we met. So it feels, he and I, again, it is a point of extreme wonder, surrender, marvel, and receiving of gifts for me, because all there is love and brilliance and trust and a history of work to prove it. But he and I were mentored by some of the same people. So Lori Carlos, Robbie McCulley, he's got a really long list, but we come from the same artistic lineage, which includes Jawole Willard Jo Zolar of Urban Bush Women.
I want to circle back to Bull Jean and your mother.
Oh, yeah.
Because you put it out there.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And as I talk about Bull Jean, I mean, I see Bull Jean as a very real presence, as much as anyone with flesh sitting in the seat here, because there's something very powerful about conjuring up these characters from your creative mind and then making them available to us where we can reference them in that way. You know, if I were to tell this crowd, you know, Miss Sophia and Seeley, no one would have a hard time understanding what I'm talking about. Just as much when I say Bull Jean, because it's more than just the words on a page. It's a very real presence that comes into our lives. The first question around that is the relationship of Bull Jean and your mother and the healing that you needed and got from that. Can you speak a little bit more about that? Because that's intriguing to me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and it's in two parts because it was in two different times in my life. So in the Bull Jean stories, so my mom is from Memphis and I grew up in LA, although I was sent to Memphis a lot. And so, and the South Central LA that I grew up in, everybody was from the South, basically. Black Americans, you know, you could go and never see no white people. And maybe never see nobody that wasn't from a specific part of the South. And so I was raised by a single parent. I later became a part of the household with my blood father and my stepmom, who are from New Orleans. But those formative years, it was my mom and all those Southerners from like Memphis, Mississippi, you know, et cetera, Texas, and being sent back home a lot. But my mom was a single parent at a time when that was really not okay, you know, and I feel like she was always afraid because we were barely making it. And if she hadn't been so smart and self-determining, and she would just use her beauty, honey. She had 3 boyfriends at all times, and they had different things. You know, one of them paid my tuition. I'm gonna just leave it there. But anyway, but there was a way that she was really like not emotionally available to me. And what I recognize now is that I was very sensitive. I am very sensitive. I'm probably clairsentient. You know what I mean? And I was so sensitive. And and then by the time it was clear that I wasn't growing out of being a tomboy, and I was always kind of like genderqueer, which, you know, there was no words for that at that time. But basically, as it became clear that who I was in my body was not acceptable, quote unquote, I just became angry. I became very angry. And then, you know, started drinking at a very young age and all of this and that, running the streets. And I was poisonous inside my own self. And so with Bull Jean, the Bull Jean stories, I knew something because I was like, why do I keep ending up with these women who don't want to be with me, that can't commit to me? And at the same time, I started working towards getting sober. And, you know, I'm sure I said this when we talked before, but the person, Lori Wilson, that helped me get sober, she would say like, well, fucker, everywhere you go, there you are. And because of how she said it, I never forgot. I think about it every day to this day. But I started to look at myself and realize that I actually was afraid and didn't want to do the work to be available. And so with Bull Jean, one, I was grieving the loss of the older people on my mom's side of the family. So I just wanted to hear them and feel them and play with them. And, you know, not that they actually literally talked like that or would tell me these stories, but it conjured them for me. And then two, I wanted to look at someone who identified as butch, that was a lesbian in the South, in the rural South. And I wanted her to be someone who lived from her heart. And so I just kind of wrote my way through all of that. And, you know, by the time I was out in the world with the Bull Jean stories, I was sober. I had stopped that pattern in myself. And then, you know, life changed for me because my own inner toxicity is released. And then with Bull Jean We Wake, I was looking, my mom fell and broke her neck in two places in 2018. And I was so afraid she was going to die. She is fine. She's drinking wine. She don't cooperate with us, not one bit. And, you know, she's doing her thing. But it really, really, really scared me. And then not long after that, Aretha Franklin died. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I couldn't even bear to feel anything. But I knew that I really needed to, and Bull Jean could help me hold grief and love and loss and possibility. Like I needed to expand what I was capable of holding. And I feel like with Bull Jean We Wake, she did help me do that. And the very last piece in the book is actually the beginning of a new piece that I'm working on. That last piece in this book, I actually wrote for my mother. So, which I can read when we're ready for that. But it also opened up something in me that helped me write a piece that I now have a draft for that'll be published in 2025. And the working title is called Before You Go. And in my heart with the piece, I'm looking my mother in the eye and telling her I love her. And I'm seeing and receiving her love back.
Has your mother had a chance to interact with Bull Jean or tell you how that the creation of Bull Jean has affected her?
She's only been to one show. She came in 1994, Austin, Texas. My theater company at the time, the Root Women Theater Company, was performing a piece called Love, Rituals, and Rage, and Bull Jean is in there. And she said, I don't know what she didn't understand none of it. She didn't, and I had given her the script and everything, given her some books. She's like, she can't read my work. She didn't understand none of it, but she loved that people came up to her after. So she was fabulous. She had a good time. She partied, and she ain't been to nothing else since. So I don't even bother with that with her. Yeah.
Speaking about how one approaches your book and your mother, looking at the book, if you were to open it, it's not like a regular book that you would read. And so if someone were to go to the counter and pick up the book and buy it and take it home, what do you think is the best way for them to approach this book, to interact with it, to have this type of conversation with Bull Jean and Datum?
To read it out loud. Yeah. And I say that because so many people have told me that that's what they do, and then they are able to enter it bet more.
Well, I think it's time for you to read something else.
All right. I'll read the piece I was talking about. It's how the book ends. And next time I'm gonna have to print this bigger. Let me get myself together. Okay, yeah, right. Then see, what had happened was all turn looked my way, and the churning in Bull Jean's heart reached me, and I knew why all the circling and telling and opening and praying and dreaming had been swirling and coming back and moving through and falling out all around. And right then, in the flicker of that, I saw Bull Jean's son, man, boy, junior, fly straight into Bull Jean's heart, into the churning with the eyelashes that seemed to reach and curl the sun back into the light of he eyes. He long black hair pulled tightly into the black of he skin, which paint a powerful picture of all them that was. And they pull me in too, straight into Bull Jean's heart, into the churning, and we fly. And I know what is mine to do, to offer back, to grow through, to return, and lift we. And I cried, and my tears woke me and carried me in their flood, washing me in every never earth dream, all the broken promises, the thickened scars and ruptured hands, the years of dancing on shards of regret and shame with dampened desires and snuffed out light, the pretending, the turned away, the smoothed over, the act like, the fester, the put on, the tight lips, the half open eyes, the hushed spirit, the pushed away truth, the heavy, the drowned. And I knew I was born for this, to love what is possible to life. And they rose up. They rose smiling, gaga, 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 running and laughing and skipping and fanning and tumbling, flick, wave, circle, drop, clap, twirl, play, call, pray. Flick, wave, circle, drop, clap, twirl, play, call, pray. They rose waving, smiling, never leaving. They rose carrying me to you. May all the courage that you have so desperately walked with circle back and strengthen your next steps. May every act of self-determination that you enacted return as divine defiance lighting your way. May all the laughter that you have poured into gatherings spill back into your bones and move you to dance. May your unrequited curiosities, your deep down dreams, every bit of never returned love, each yearning, all your longings, may they show themselves to you unfurled and loosed in light. May regret and grief and shame ungrip your spirit. May you be healed in all directions of time. May you break the bondage of cycles that cause harm. May you soar in new possibilities. May the stars blanket your return within and beyond the veils. May love become you. May you welcome, walk with, and witness those coming. May you be free. Remember, we wake.
Oh, thank you. That is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful. I've had the pleasure of hearing your voice on a couple of CDs that you produced many years ago. And I remember riding down the coast to Mexico with a friend and listening to bulging stories. And that just brings back the memories of that. And the gift of hearing the creator read the work in her own words. There's nothing like that. Is there a chance we're going to hear some of your words on a CD or digital form in the future so that people can have the joy of hearing that piece?
That is, yes, that is a deep desire of mine. Because I imagine so many sounds and so many layers and so many voices and so much texture that I imagine, particularly with We Wake, it to live as a piece that is performed like Daniel's going to direct it really as a ritual installation that's very interactive. I imagine working with dancers. I work with a lot of choreographers, women of color choreographers. I can imagine them taking the pieces and doing something with it. And a recording is something that I really, really, really want and imagine as well.
That'll be beautiful. I know we have to open the floor to conversations from the audience and the chat, but I do have a couple of quick questions before we do that. The first thing is, I can't help but to think about Toni Morrison talking about sitting at a bench by her house one day and having this woman emerge from a lake and come and sit next to her. And that woman ultimately became a character in her book. And it just really makes me think of how real these characters are that one conjures up out of her creative imagination, or the mermaid's creative imagination. And so I am curious as to, for you as a writer and a playwright and creative, what's the process of making yourself available for these entities to come into our space?
When they are performed or as I'm writing?
Both.
Oh, okay. Thank you. For me, with the writing, something that I have learned over time, and then learned what I was doing, and then learned how to accelerate that. But I started writing when I was a teenager, just trying to survive my own heartbreak and feelings, and always being an avid reader, having so much inspiration from people like Toni Morrison. And then when I started actually writing for performance with the Bull Jean stories, I feel like I was a method writer. Like I lived all that. And then I was like, I cannot do that. That shit almost took me out. That was like, we ain't gonna live like that, where you got to live everything. So I realized what my creative process is and how to accelerate it. So music, which is why when I couldn't listen to Aretha, I couldn't really write. I couldn't really approach the thing I needed to write because I needed her voice to help me. But music, things come to me over a long period of time. And then I start noticing everything that is connected to that thing. And then usually it ultimately is really about what wants to heal inside of me. So by really what I really do is just break my own heart open and go into that wound to heal it. Because I know that at the end of the day, it's actually not about, well, first of all, because I need to be healthy. But secondly, at the end of the day, the work that I'm doing is in service of something that is actually not about me. And so because I have toured for so long and had so many returning conversations, I know that the deeper I go, the more of service I can be and the work can be. And so I've just learned it takes me a long time. I can accelerate it with conversations, books, documentaries, and music. And then at some point I'll discover, and it's always a surprise to me every single time, I have a draft. I'm like, when the hell did that happen? But at some point I have a draft. And then at that point, I need to work with other people. So having people like Omi and Daniel and my daughter and so many other people that I can just call or sit with and informally get responses or feedback or whatever. And then at some point more formally have processes that allow me to be with other people with the work. So Alexis Pauline Gumbs is one of my dear, dear beloveds of everything. But for instance, with the Dat Black Mermaid Man Lady, the show, Alexis was officially the dramaturg. And she walked into our first rehearsal and gave me 75 questions. And I was like, I started crying. I was like, oh my God. And they weren't questions about the work. They were questions that came to her that the work made her think. And that was everything that I needed. So at some point I need that. And then the next step is seeing what happens when you have actually an audience. And so it just goes from there. But I work with, even if they are people that are new to me, there has to be an inner knowing of love and trust. Because this work for me is my spiritual practice. It's
Mhm.
my offering. It's my service.
Mhm.
And like I said, at the end of the day, it's not about me. And it needs a certain kind of, I would really honestly, spiritual rigor, even more so than official artist training, although I'm all about training. But like the jazz singers, we need people to walk in with everything that they are and know and let that go. Not everyone's able to do that. So that's part of what I'm looking for, so that there can be a surrender and a curiosity and a tending.
The final question before I surrender to the floor is, have you ever been surprised by something you've written that you've given to someone to perform, and it comes out in a different way? You hear it in a different way than where you wrote it, and it's just very different from what you intended. Has that ever happened to you? Because I think so much about the process of creating something is controlling it in a space where you're working on it, but then you have to give it wings. And sometimes the hardest part, I imagine, is giving it to other people and seeing what they do. And sometimes it could possibly not be what you were thinking would be done.
Well, I think I always enter with curiosity and surrender. And part of why I can do that is because I am working with people that I love and trust, and that have something to give it. And so, but that happens to me all the time. I'm always surprised. So most recently, actually at the Los Angeles book release party of this book, which our daughter, Lee Robbie Gaiman Jones, curated for me. Omi was one of the people that read, and I thought she wrote it. I didn't know that she was reading this thing, and I was like, wow, that is so beautiful. I didn't realize until much later that it was actually in the book.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I could speak to you all night, but I know that would be selfish of me. So I'll have to surrender to the floor for any questions you all may have, or to our online audience.
Well, I think we should start it out with an online question, because you called Alexis Pauline Gumbs into the room, and Alexis responded,
Alexis, baby, I love you.
in kind. So this first question is from Alexis. We love you, Sharon. We love you, Angela. One thing that I am present to in this moment is how your facilitation functions through portal opening questions. And then your writing holds so many energy shifting prayers. Would you like to say anything about the lineages of questions and prayers in your life or among your teachers? Love you, APG.
Alexis Pauline Gumbs, bam, drop the microphone. You go first on that one, Angela.
Oh, I think she was addressing it to you.
I think for me, there's multiple tiers to this, because when I first started writing, it was all very private. I didn't share my work until I was 30. So I had all this time alone with my work and in my own head and imagination. And I was aspiring to tell stories as good as my family, which I don't know that I still can do, but they are good storytellers. And so I think I always just had a lot of questions, period. And then later, being mentored by Lori Carlos, who was the original Woman in Blue and the original For Color Girls. And she's an ancestor now, but just changed everything for everybody, everywhere she went. I watched her in the room, and I learned from her as I drove her to the store and drove her home. And you know how all that is, like old school apprentice. I watched her, this thing of not knowing in the most powerful way, so that what wants to be there can be discovered, as opposed to from an ego place trying to do what you know and do it again because you know it works. So like exceptional jazz artist, Lori would walk in, and of course she had the most rigorous experience and training and ethic and all of that, but she would listen with her whole essence for what wanted to happen. And she would listen in your body. She would listen to the text. She would listen to the group, and then she would go from there. And then as soon as you got comfortable, she'd change that shit. And so I think questions are like gold for me. And so I listen with my whole essence for questions for myself. When I am a dramaturg or facilitating for someone else, I'm listening for questions. And I also have done a lot of different kinds of spiritual practices. And along the way, I just decided that the evidence of spirituality has to be joy. And so then that was a whole nother thing, because then I'm like, how you going to be mad and joyful? So anyway, that's something else.
Folks in the room.
Did I hear you mention something about the concept of the mother wound as you were talking? And if so, are you in conversation or familiar, or I'm just knowing of the work of Vanessa Matier around the mother wound?
I don't. Yeah, I'm not. I would love to know more.
She does. She's been a writing workshop leader for quite a while in the Northeast. And she similar experiences as you described with her mom and the elders, female elders in her family, and being not accepted as a queer person, etc. And just having felt neglected and not knowing how to love her mother, and now how that influenced her life for so long that she had to learn how to write through it.
Yeah.
And so now she conducts workshops mainly for women, queer women, or maybe not just queer, but she's a queer person. So, and she addresses how we write to work through that particular pain that is just so devastating for so many of us.
Yeah. I'll have to write her name down before we leave.
Blessings, Sharon. I love you so much.
I love you too, Aaron.
I love everybody in this room. Look, just for 5 seconds, clap it up for yourself.
That's right.
You know
That's
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We made it here today.
Yes, indeed.
It's an honor and a blessing to have breath in our body.
Yes, it is.
To be our full selves.
Yes.
To be in a room where we can be loved and accepted, right? We can't ever not acknowledge that. Marianne, you the one, you the G.
That's it. That's it right there.
You the G. OG. Angela, my youth teacher. Thank you so much. You have given me so much.
Right.
I honor you. Sharon, you already my counselor, professor, wisdom giver, spirit twin.
Love you.
Life coach, everything on me.
Yeah.
I don't even know why you put up with me, but I adore every part of you. Like I follow you. I want to say, thank you so much for being you. It requires a lot of courage to be ourselves. And, when I was teaching at Spelman, every semester I taught your plays, every single semester. And so when we would be reading, right, on the page out loud, when you have a line, we, he, she, they were like, what? And immediately, I remember when you came to some of our classes virtually, they were like, what is this? But they all got it. Mm-hmm. And I love how illegible you are, because it represents the South for me. I'm from Alabama, right? We got Mississippi, we got New Orleans, right? Yeah. And so can you kind of speak to like, how have you actually crafted the courage enough to communicate and write in the way you do? When I think about you, I think about, Lori Carlos, I think about Robbie McCulley, like all of these women, right, that are crafting new spaces, but like, how do you actually do that courage wise? Because it's so easy to kind of steer down the road that we know.
Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes we take for granted, especially as queer folk, that we are so far out of the lines. Like, how do you have the courage to do that? Right. And two, what do you have to give yourself in order to be able to be you fully? Right. And then do you have like accountability checkpoints? And I know you and Omi do this probably with one another, where you kind of say, because we are in an industry of the arts too, right? So you have spiritual practice in this industry, which is dope, but it's still an industry. And I feel like you work against it, but alongside it in very interesting ways that is important for younger artists to understand how. So all of those questions, you answer how you want to. And I love you.
I love you too. I love you too. And I love these questions. Thank you so much. And feel free to remind me if I miss, I just follow love, and I return to love. My work was private. It was just for me for a very long time. And then really it wasn't until I moved to Austin that I started in 89 that I started sharing the work, but I was in social services. I was managing syphilis cases for the health department. I was with the first wave of HIV outreach workers and early intervention specialists, and they were artists. And it was mostly women of color. There were men too. And when they found out I had work, they made me pull that work out and start doing stuff with it. And they were people that worked globally. So Ana Cisnet, Marsha Ann Gomez, Raul Salinas, they just made me do stuff. And I just, and I had so much respect for them, and they helped me so much. And it was that old school, I'm carrying the sculpted pieces into the thing, because that's what you do. And then you learn about life. And so I had these great examples and these people that just looked at me and claimed me, like Lori. She just looked at me and she decided I was hers. And so then she's sending me everywhere and doing all kind of stuff. And I'm driving her to the Whole Foods and my life changes, and actually Lori is Raul Salinas, the two reasons I started facilitating and understanding so much more about how this is my heart, spirit, soul's intention for service, as opposed to the other work, which at some point I had to choose because I couldn't keep doing all of it. And I chose to focus on being an artist. But Raul Salinas said, "Hey, sister, I'm doing these workshops for the youth in the detention center. Come do a workshop with me." And I had never done a workshop, but you ain't gonna tell Raul no. So I went up in there. And then I was like, oh, that's what this is. Lori, I was complaining. She said, "You need to go help somebody." So I was like, wow, what does that mean? And so then I started doing workshops at my house because I noticed there were these younger than me people following me around. And I was like, well, let me just start doing. But people just looking at me and investing in me and helping me. And then also, I think thank God for my family. Like now I'm talking about all 6 of the parents. So stubborn. I am so stubborn. So I'm just too stubborn to stop. I applied for the Creative Capital Grant 7 times. I was going to apply it until they gave that to me. Yeah. And they finally gave it to me. Just stubborn, but loved and supported and carried. Doors were open, ground was broken, and I just kept walking. I think I also didn't really know if I had understood, because I'm coming through it from more from the streets than from an institutional setup. And so I didn't really know what I was doing until I knew what I was doing. But if I had known earlier, I would have thought I couldn't do it and I wouldn't have done it. Yeah. And so by the time I knew what I was doing, 1, I was too stubborn to stop. And 2, I had so much support. And because my investment was in love, in community, in healing, in connection. And it was by the time I really got it, that was also all over the country because I had been traveling a lot and returning places. Yeah, my yes was to what felt good and right, as opposed to what I thought I was supposed to do. And I think I was just lucky in that way. But now, as someone who facilitates creative process for others, and I now have a bunch of art children, you one of them, so it's like I'm just kind of like, Lori, just call me, and then we'll go to the store.
Wow, if I had known what I was doing, I wouldn't have done it.
Right.
That's a word.
Yeah.
That's a word. So I have two questions. Pick one, answer them both, whatever.
Okay.
So the first is, I'm sure you've been compared to, in some ways, to Zora Neale Hurston in terms of the folk speak. And Erin mentioned, how'd you have the courage to do that, right? Have Black folks come for you like they came for her? With like, what's all that gibberish? And you're making us look like we don't. Anybody ever came close to that with you?
Not.
And what did you do to them?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
So if that has happened, it has not been brought to my attention. And I think I'm so busy, and I don't know that I've been compared to her, but I know what you're saying.
Talking about the folks.
Yeah,
right?
And part of what I personally, and I think she was doing too, and Langston Hughes and so many others, and they were people that greatly influenced me because I read so voraciously their work. When I think of storytelling, I'm thinking of how brilliant my family is and how they can take a word and they can tell you 50 things with that one word based on how they pause.
That's genius.
You know what I'm saying? So I think I'm so focused on Black brilliance, and I'm so just in love and in awe of my Southern family and roots. And I aspire really to be like them. So I'm not worried about
Not worried
them
about it
people.
like that.
But maybe I've also just been protected. And then there have been people like Dr. Jones, Dr. Omeo Jones.
And that's a segue into question two. And question two is, there's a lot of my work I don't release because I can't find an Omi.
Oh.
And I am getting too old to just keep storing stuff in the shed. And it's exactly, or in large part, what you just described about that person who shows up for you, that person who protects you. You protect each other, but there's a way in which the Omis of the world show up for us. And it's uncommon and it's really hard to find.
Yeah.
And in my stubbornness, which is working against me, I'm like, I'm not going to finish it. I'm just not going to do it till she shows up. What do you think about that? Other than that, it makes no sense.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think a few things come to heart. I think one, doing it because you can't stop doing it. You can't not do it. Doing it for yourself is probably more important than anything else. But then in terms of those next steps, being a part of groups, being a part of communities, being a part of kitchen table conversations even, but to nurture it where you find the nurturing, even if you have to make that happen. I used to have a whole box of rejection letters. I finally decided to let them go. I'm like, why am I holding on to this? But just rejection, like so much. And thank God I just kept on, and again, stubborn. And also, but I was a part of a nurturing, loving community that I was able to keep returning to in different forms and aesthetics. So in people who do maybe more literature, people who are performance, people who are in dance, but who all work in the same lineage. and just being able to return to those conversations and return to that hug, return to that encouragement, and just keep, just
I'm such a
continuing.
lay in the cut introvert, and that also is something that I am trying to work around. So, for that reason.
But I bet you ZAMI has some stuff for you to, just at least, like here, you're here.
Yes.
Like, I think that's
I was
something.
not going to not be here.
Yeah,
That was
thank
not
you.
gonna. Thank you so much.
So Sharon, I'm curious about the role of geography in your work, and particularly Memphis. Angela and I have been to Memphis not so long ago, and living an hour from Memphis growing up, it was the next big city for us. It was where we ran to when we wanted to feel grown up, where we snuck to. Memphis was all of that. And, Memphis has such a historic history and memory. So I'm wondering if you've been back to Memphis. And if you have been back to Memphis, what was that like going back there, particularly in the context of writing Bull Jean and drawing upon those memories and those stories, and actually being a woman child in Memphis and growing up there?
I haven't been back since I was a teenager. My relatives, they all passed, and I think I became estranged in a way, and maybe unable in my own self to show back up there. And my mom, when she left when she was 20, and I think she went back one time, but that was because, as a young woman who got pregnant and wasn't married, like that was a different story. So I haven't been back, and in my heart, in my imagination, in my spirit, in my writing, I feel like for everything almost everything I've ever written, the living, the dead, the unborn, and those coming coexist. Time is this and that. And I would say place is more mythology. And usually I'm saying it's a southern rural place, but maybe it's also the sky, so places like that for me. But yeah, I haven't been since I was a teenager, a young teenager, a young teen.
Let's go back together.
Okay. Okay.
Sounds kind of dangerous.
It does, doesn't it? Okay, that sounds fun. Yeah. I want to say Dr. Omi Oshun-Joniel-Jones has written the book called The Theatrical Jazz Performance, Ashe and the Power of the Present Moment, which is the ethnographic book that talks about the lineage that we are from. And she's a retired professor emeritus from the University of Texas at Austin. She started the Yoruba Studies program. She started the Performing Blackness program. She started the Sheshade Gallery, so on and on. Boom. On and on.
Thank you for all of that, Sharon. And
Thank you.
everybody for all of this. It's medicine. So thank you. All right. So you put all the academic stuff out in the thing. What has been in what ways have you been associated with and consciously disassociated with academic life?
That's good. Well, any academic affiliation and connection I have, it really started with you in 1990. So you're the one that introduced me and my work to E. Patrick Johnson and so many other people. And so I've had the privilege of being invited into lots of different academic communities around the country with like world changers like yourself, like Patrick, like, so many other people. And then seeing some of y'all's students who are now grown and then who hire my Black ass. Yeah. But I follow love. So I never wanted to be a full-time academic. I want to love everybody. So I've been in residence in lots of different institutions. The longest period of time was officially for 2 years sometimes it's for 2 days, sometimes it's for a week, sometimes it's for a month. So I get to go in and just have fun and, just, love and do work and go on home. And that works for me.
Can I say one more thing? I mean, because I just want to add something to that. Because Sharon's making it seem as though I introduced her to academic people and all this other stuff. That may be true, but what they discovered with you is how their own programs would be enriched.
Oh.
And that wasn't me. That was you showing up with the questions that Alexis referenced, all of that. At the University of Texas, it was Ted Gordon, not Omi Oshun, who decided to make you the first, internship director for the Developing Black Studies Department. You. So I just wanted people to understand, I appreciate that. She's a wonderful cheerleader, but it is the force of what you do and who you are that open people to other possibilities, even some stanky, yes. But even some stanky old places that I never thought would bring, they opened to who you are. And so I needed people to get a real idea on that.
Thank you, my own.
So I want to thank you both so much. Angela, do you have any closing words for us to bring us on home?
I can't help but to remember the first time that I encountered you was on the printed page of Curve magazine. Many years ago, an incredible personal essay you wrote. And, you were one of those persons who lived in the shoebox of my articles and books about what it meant to be a Black lesbian, Black queer, and just the joy of knowing that one could point to the places in the world where there was somebody like you, and the strength and the power that, so whether it's in person or on the printed page or in performance, I have always met you at a place of joy.
Oh, thank you.
And I've always been blessed by that. Mary and I talked about how Sharon is, every time you meet her, it's always a moment of joy and love that blesses us beyond measure. So my hope is that you will continue to be that creative who conjures these incredible characters who come into the world and offer us healing, offer us joy, offer us a place for a peace of mind. And I recognize that comes with a great deal of responsibility and work. So with that, I also hope and pray that you have the energy, the blessing, the continued love that sustains you in your work. And thank you for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you so much. I received that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Sharon Bridgforth is a cultural treasure. I know you will agree with me on that. I have posted a link to the interview she gave us a couple of years ago and hope that you will listen to that as well if you've not already done so, because it's absolutely fantabulous. Oh, thank you for listening. And I'm going to ask you, as we celebrate 6 years of podcasting this month of August 2024, to go to wherever you get your podcast and leave a rating and review. If you've never done it in the past 6 years, well, now is your opportunity. It's your time to shine by leaving some good words in cyberspace about what we do at the ZAMI NOBLA podcast. I would appreciate it so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as always, my friend, my wish and desire for you is that you will be overwhelmed with the sweetness of life in the midst of all the many things we are dealing with right now. Have a sweet one.